If you've got a throbbing pain that you can literally put your finger on right there that feels like someone's stabbing you right in the elbow, guess what? You're on the right video in the right place because we're going to get rid of that once and for all. What's up guys, Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com. So if you've got that pain right there, tennis elbow, I don't care if you don't play tennis because most people that have this actually don't. What can you do about it? Well, I made a video a while back where I discussed what the actual cause of tennis elbow was. And it wasn't actually your elbow. It's just getting blamed for it. It's coming from either mechanics of the shoulder and the shoulder blade that aren't in place, or maybe even down below that at the hip, or even somewhere distal here in the wrist that's not functioning the way it should, that causes this elbow to bear the brunt of the issue. Well, as I mentioned before, most people get this not from tennis, although it came from the fact that when people did the backhand, they would experience that pain. But we're talking about what's happening right here in the gym, because our problem is oftentimes caused right here in the gym. And I can almost point my finger at one particular exercise that does this, and it's the side lateral raise. I love the side lateral raise. I program the side lateral raise in almost every single program I do. However, there's some key points that you want to make sure that you're focusing on to do it right. So let me show you what we're talking about. When we do that side lateral raise, one of the things I preach so many times is that this zone right about here for most people is sort of the dead man zone, right? Because what happens in this range is we try to take a weight that's basically appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish, which is a raise of the dumbbell out to the side, but it exceeds the ability of these extensor tendons to manage that weight, especially as the arm gets longer and longer and held out further from our body. Whereas down here is really where you want to focus your efforts, the light side of the rack. But when you do that, as I pointed out, you use these intensity techniques that take the light weight, or the weight that feels maybe a little too light to you right now, and it ups the overall intensity of the effort you're doing, so you still get the gains you're seeking. Things like 1.5 reps, right? Slow motion reps. That's where you want to live. I've also showed that when you go down this end of the rack, you actually can handle that as well. But there's ways that we do that with a cheat lateral that actually is almost pointing towards that ultimate solution for tennis elbow, because we're getting some other things contributing. You can see that right here, hips, lower body, other things contributing. So if I were to take a weight that was too heavy for me to handle, as I go out here, I'm basically asking for isometric contraction here of the wrist to hold that weight from falling down, right? We can see it. Let me go into a really light weight so I can demonstrate even better. Right here, I'm preventing this from falling. So that isometric contraction is wholly responsible from the extensors here of the wrist that all bundle up and attach at that one point that winds up hurting you. And it doesn't have to happen over the course of many workouts. You can exceed the capacity of these extensors on one single rep, which can cause this problem. So it's not necessarily an overuse, more of an overtaxation of these muscles that can't handle that. So what I've told you before to do is turn the arm up a bit, right? No longer pour in the pitchers, but turn the arm up a little bit. And we talked about the benefits of what that does for the shoulder by creating more room and less impingement. But what it also does is it takes the extensors from being what are primarily preventing that dumbbell from falling down, and it now turns it a little bit like this, which allows more of the radial deviators of the wrist this way to take off some of that load. That change alone will help most people who are doing the exercise who feel like it's causing pain in their elbow. But again, let's say you already got the problem, you've already got the pain. How do we solve that? That's where we interestingly go back and we look at something like the cheat lateral for the true solution. So here it is. Instead, we want to grab this. You can use a dumbbell if you want, but a kettlebell works perfectly here. And the exercise that you want to start incorporating 3 times a week, if you already have a raging case of tennis elbow, believe it or not, is a kettlebell swing. And why this works is because we need to try to start training the body to work as the kinetic chain that's intended to be. Meaning that this spot here that was overloaded, that was thrown the responsibility of maintaining a weight that it couldn't handle because the rest of the body wasn't participating, we need to start to reintroduce the rest of the body to that move. And the best way to do it is to take it from the side and bring it to the front, which still causes the same stress here at that point of the elbow, and give it the support that it needs with the other muscles. So what the kettlebell swing does is it loads us into hip flexion, right? We're getting into this hip flexion position and then allowing the extension of the hips to assist the weight as it comes up keeping the isometric control here, but again, offloading this and giving it some additional support. So if we can continue to do something to work on getting over the injury rather than putting everything away, packing up your gym bag, going home and staying home and hoping it gets better, or worse, rubbing on it, icing it, ultrasounding it, throwing a brace on, everything I said not to do in that last video, that's not going to be a long-term solution. That's why you keep going back and getting this problem over and over and over again, because you're never working on actually strengthening the muscles that need strengthening and incorporating the entire kinetic chain. So what we do is we start with 2 hands on the kettlebell, right, in this position here. You can see that we have to have this neutral wrist position, which requires activation of the extensors of the forearm. So if I'm in here and I perform a swing where I load up in here, load up posteriorly, you can see at the top, it's driven by the hips. But the arm is staying in this extended position, and the wrist is staying in this extended position, which is creating that stress, but the good form of stress, to that extensor tendon wad up here in the elbow, and maintaining the mechanics in the support from below. So I do swings. I do them 3 times a week for, let's say, 50 swings at a time, increasing it to 75, 100 swings, gradually increasing the load that you use each time you do it, or at least the volume of the swings that you do, and then gradually increasing the load. But one thing you can do without having to actually increase the load of the kettlebell you're using is then switch to a single arm version of it. So the same thing here, load through the hips and pop up. Again, even if you have a raging case right now of lateral epicondylitis or tennis elbow, you'll find that that doesn't really stress that. It gets blood to the area. It's doing much more for you in terms of a long-term solution than doing any of that rubbing or throwing a brace on it, a short-term Band-Aid. The next thing you could do comes from looking towards that cheat lateral again. Why are people able to handle loads? Even if, again, you have a raging case of tennis elbow right now, you could likely do a cheat lateral with heavier weight far more than you could do strict lateral with that middle of the road weight, like I talked about here. That's because you're getting the assistance of the lower body in terms of loading and assisting that weight on the way up, supporting those extensors, not leaving them out on an island. So if we know that we can get help by rotating and loading into a hip, you could also do an offset version of a kettlebell swing. So I drop it down to the side and I come up like that. So now I'm loading these hips to be able to drive up through internal rotation and then forcibly into external rotation here at the top. The fact is, how you perform your swing is going to be up to you. Again, 2-handed to start, single arm down the middle, single arm off to the side. But the more you start to incorporate kettlebell swings into your overall routine, the faster you're going to get to not only a permanent solution to this problem, but actually some immediate relief, because these muscles need to still be worked. They just have to be worked the right way, and they need to get the support that they're looking for and need in order to function the right way without pain. If you guys are looking for programs where we put the science back into strength and we put the thought into how we program the things we do, make sure you head over to ATHLEAN-X.com and check out our plans. In the meantime, if you found the video helpful, please leave a comment. Let me know how incorporating the swings have helped you to finally get rid of this pain once and for all, despite all the other things you've tried. I really want to make sure I hear from you below. If you haven't done so, make sure you click subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss a new video when we put one out. All right, guys, see you soon.